This is The Tea Mind with me, Erica Moore. It's a space to slow down, step out of the noise and see things a little more clearly. Some episodes are conversations about the moment that clicked and what changed afterwards. Others are shorter clarity sessions, just a few minutes to come back to yourself and think clearly in the middle of a full day. Because when the usual pace stops working and everything starts to feel a little unclear, the answer isn't more input, it's creating a moment to see what is already there. And at the end, I'll share a simple tea ritual that you can try yourself. So, welcome to this week's episode of the Tea Mind podcast. And there is a version of life that looks really right from the outside. Maybe you've got the career that you've always wanted, the stability that you were looking for, but there might be a sense that you've done what you're supposed to do, but something maybe feels just a little bit off. Maybe you've got that niggling feeling in the back of your head. And today's conversation is with Hannah Buchan, the Live More coach, who works right in that space with women whose lives are working, but perhaps not feeling the way that they expected. And what's really interesting is that Hannah's work doesn't necessarily have to start with huge dramatic changes, but it's more about tuning in to how you actually want to feel on a day-to-day basis. And somewhere along the line, that question seems to have shifted everything, moving from her job as a teacher in the city to her life as a coach by the sea. And from chasing outcomes to really paying attention to experiences, from overthinking to taking small, deliberate action. And in this episode, we're going to explore that space in between. That moment when things aren't wrong, but they're not necessarily quite right either. And that tension between being capable and between feeling alive. And the point where something just clicks. And it might not click all at once, but enough to just start moving differently. So welcome, Hannah, to the Tea Mind podcast. I'm so excited to chat to you today. How are you arriving today?
Hi, Erica. I am good today. I've got my eldest is off to camp this week, so it's a bit slightly quieter house with the other two. And yeah, I've got a busy work week, but it was lovely to be able to squeeze this in.
Fantastic. So we've known each other for a number of years now, and I'm really interested in learning about, a little bit more about your background and what led up to something that clicked for you.
Sure. Okay. So I did have a moment, like you mentioned, and prior to that moment, I had definitely felt that on paper, life looked great, but I did have this niggling sense that there must be something more. I had no idea what that more might look like. And I also had a feeling, and I know I work with lots of women in this space who sometimes feel similar, but I also had a sense that I didn't have much option. Do you know, I trained as a teacher and, what could I possibly do if I wasn't going to teach and how could I leave that security? So on paper life looked great, but the reality was most kind of evenings once I got the kids to bed, I would be sort of sitting low level thinking, what am I doing with my life? Googling jobs, thinking, oh, maybe I could do this, or maybe it's that. Driving my husband up the wall by the constant kind of thoughts and really ultimately feeling stuck, which is really it's quite a horrible place to be. Like it feels doesn't feel great. It feels there's sort of an element of life passing you by, a difficult space to be in. On the other side of it now, and I'll talk about kind of what shifted, but on the other side of that stuckness, I am now able to see that actually often when we feel stuck, that's a really useful bit of information for us, and it possibly is a sign that you're ready for a new chapter, for something to look a bit different. Doesn't need to be radical, but I think that often stuckness can be a really useful thing because it's a sign that we want to move forward with something and a real opportunity to do that. But the bit where we're stuck and trying to work it out, not great. So You talked about a point where sort of things changed, and I think I did have a point where it sort of started that ball rolling. And it was a conversation that I had with my husband at the time. And we were talking about weekend plans. And we had a weekend planned of kind of seeing sort of different people. And I was being, if I'm honest, I was being less than enthusiastic. So at this point in my life, I was kind of getting through the weekend to get, sorry, getting through the week to get to the weekend. And then at the weekend, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And actually, that's what came up. I was being less than enthusiastic, and he said, okay, so if you don't want to do that, what do you want to do? And in this sort of moment of frustration, and I remember it really clearly, standing in the kitchen saying, I just want to feel alive. And for me, that feeling alive bit was the bit that was really missing from my life at the time. And that ultimately really kind of shifted things forward. It didn't happen overnight, and I can talk through kind of the impact that that understanding that had. But that was the real kind of key point. And his response to that was also absolutely brilliant. He just sort of looked at me and said, like, okay, like I can't quite remember his words, but essentially it was kind of like, right, at least right, we've got something to go on then, do you know? Like, okay, we can work with this. A brilliant response. So, but yeah, that was the kind of key moment that I think just tipped over into right, actually, I can start to move things forward.
And I'm interested about the before then, when you were working as a teacher
Mm.
and sort of working to get to the weekends and not really feeling alive. What was it you were feeling instead? And were you projecting forward to the future? Like how did that show up for you?
Yeah, so how was I feeling? I think so. I had two of my boys at that point, and they were little, you know, at sort of nursery. Um, and I think I was feeling at the time pretty overwhelmed. Um, I sort of I'd done really well in my career, and I sort of moved up quickly, and I'd done that by like working hard, you know, and like putting everything into it and really going for it. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And but then the kids came along, and I didn't have that, I couldn't do that at work and have anything left for home. And I think that that was really challenging for me. It was really difficult. So life felt really full on and overwhelming. And looking back now, like I didn't know how to kind of manage myself within that. And that also made making any decision incredibly difficult because it just felt like I had no space to even think, do you know, never mind like make life decisions. So how did it kind of feel? I think a lot of it felt that there was that sort of, I remember Sundays, I used to sort of think, right, well, if I can get on top of everything on Sunday and try and make my week a bit easier, you know, I was just trying to kind of work harder and kind of get it all done and get to the end of this sort of weighty kind of to-do list. And by the end of the day, I'd be exhausted and I'd probably be pretty kind of irritable with the kids. And do you know, I'd get to the weekend and probably I wasn't really doing much for me. You know, I'd maybe go out with friends, but then that's, you know, probably have a glass of wine or two, and then that sort of didn't then maybe feel great either. I was just honestly, I think the feeling was I felt stuck, I felt pretty lost, but also, do you know, I love my family and though I did have passion for what I was doing, I was just kind of lost in it all. I think that's probably the overriding feeling.
And did you feel successful at that time?
It's a really interesting question. I knew that. I had been successful because I suppose I had that sort of idea of, well, you're going to find a career, you're gonna like do well in that career, move up in that career, and for me, I've always wanted to have a family. We'd struggled with that, so it felt like God, we finally kind of got that part done, and we had a lovely home, and um, that was like the boxes ticked for me. Like it definitely was. But did it feel like success? No, like it really didn't. So there was a real difference between like, right, I thought this was success. This is what I've been working towards. Like I'm ticking these boxes. Like so I'm kind of there. Like what like I should be. And that was something that kept coming up actually. Like I should be appreciating this. I should be enjoying this. Like why can't I be more grateful for what I've got? Well, I always just want something different. That was kind of coming up a lot as well. Like, I should just be like people, this is what people do. They just get on with life, Like, what's wrong with me that I can't, like, that I've got this like sense that I want something more.
And where did that sense lead you then, this quest for feeling alive?
Yes. So ultimately I discovered like it was all sort of in this reasonably small amount of time that one of my core values is feeling alive. That was 7 years ago now, and it still absolutely underpins who I am and how I live today. But in that initial phase, there was a few things that happened. Like the first thing was that, I mean, really at that point, and I find it really hard to believe now in my life, but at that point, I was doing nothing that was really making me feel alive, and I really was sort of getting through the days. It doesn't mean there weren't nice bits, there were, but that bit was missing. Like I didn't quite sort of feel like I was like in that. So once I realized that feeling alive was a core value, I remember I did this exercise and it was really simple. And it was just like, right, what types of things make me feel alive? I now sometimes do that work with clients and it's like, talking about really little things. So what little things can I fit into my day to make me feel alive? And my days were really full. So it had to be things that I could fit in without any radical change. So it was things like, I really remember actually, I used to like listen to Radio 2 on the commute into work. And I guess sort of just quite mindlessly listen to Radio 2. And I changed that and I started listening to kind of inspiring podcasts. And even like that shift, like I remember there were times when I would, so if I sort of listened to Radio 2, I'd almost arrive at the door almost ready, like my role at the time was really full on. I would sort of be ready for the onslaught, like into the building, like, ugh. And if I listened to something inspiring, perhaps with like a little idea or a takeaway, then I could actually arrive in quite a different state and be thinking, right, okay, I'm going to try this today, do you know? And I think, where there's hope, like that's, just even for that day, that's such a better place to start from. And so little shifts like that. It also shifted things that I had just naturally just put down to the bottom of the list because, I had my work, I had my kids, and like I couldn't justify like doing something for me. And my kids were really little. That's sort of subconsciously, I think that's what I thought. But then when I did this sort of feeling alive stuff, I realized that for me, getting outdoors, getting out in nature, particularly at the time for me, it was getting in the sea and things like that stuff brings me back to me and it gives me perspective on my life. It fills up my cup. It means that I can come back, whether it's come back into school and feel like energized and like, capable of taking on anything, or like with the kids, like come back, recharged and sort of be appreciating time with them. So one of the things I did at the time, and it felt like ridiculous. My husband, I remember just being brilliant at the time, was I decided, I think it was about 36 or 37, I decided that I really wanted to learn to surf. So I did. I used to go to these lessons and it was miles away. We were living in Edinburgh, it was out in Dunbar. And I would turn up and it would be like me and a group of teenage boys for our surf lesson. I think that was one of the things as well. I was just like, I don't care. It makes me feel alive, do you know? Like I think before that I would have been kind of waiting for somebody else to do it with me or thinking, oh God, I'm not going to do it with, a group of teenage boys. I'd much rather do it with, you know, not, grown women or whatever. But it's sort of the feeling alive bit kind of cuts through that, and it's just like, no, this is really important. Like for me to be able to have a focus, you know, be in that environment and come back feeling like myself, like that was huge at the time. It felt really radical. It really felt like I didn't have the time for it, but I also kind of didn't have the time not to do it, if that makes sense. It was sort of
Yeah.
starting to see it from a different perspective. So that was the start of things. That kind of like, what can I do? That what little shifts can I make in my life now? Like to find the joy now, like actually maybe I don't need a big shift in my career and things, do you know? Like maybe it's about like more life in my days. And I think that's often like really interesting to explore because I think it is really easy when we feel stuck to think, oh, well, if I could just change career and be doing that instead, the sort of subconscious thought is, then everything will be amazing. And I think that can really be very difficult because I think that is maybe never the case. It's not going to be one thing, like, just moving your job. I don't think is actually going to like change your life. I think it's, you got to look at all of it.
Yeah, there's a lot in that. I just want to start by, if somebody is in that situation, maybe
Mm.
they're in a job and they're just feeling completely stuck and overwhelmed and
Mhm.
like they're not getting enough out of life, or they feel like something's missing, they're feeling like they're not properly living.
Yeah.
Do you think there are things that they can do on a day-to-day basis to bring that in, and particularly in that sort of education sphere where you have to be in front of kids from X to Y time and there's not a lot of flexibility, you've got set holidays and so on. How can someone in that sphere sort of bring these things into their day to day?
Yeah. So I think that I sort of wish I'd known this now, and it's easy kind of from this perspective looking back. But I think often when we are caught in that, we can get really focused on kind of like what we don't want. Like, I hate this. I don't want to be feeling like this. I don't want to be doing this in 3 years' time. And I think a really simple exercise can just be like, okay, so how do you want to feel? And perhaps it's that you just want to feel calm, or you want to feel creative or free or adventurous. Like, how do you want life to feel? And I think that there's an automatic assumption, well, I'm not going to feel free if I work in a school, do you know, if I can't. And I think that's really worth exploring, do you know? So, for example, like to sort of look at any of those, if you want to feel life to feel like creative, for example, then again, it's just looking at tiny little ways that you can access that in your life as it is. So, it could be anything from, having a sketch pad by the seat that you sit in the evening, and a pen just sitting there ready to go. So you can, like, I don't know, doodle, like capture ideas, like sketch something, whatever. But little, like, listening to creative podcasts or music that, like, really speaks to you. If you're doing it in whether it's an education setting or whether it's you're a lawyer, whatever you are, like, where are the little opportunities for like that creativity? Like maybe it is something super like tiny and simple that that you can bring in. Like maybe it's just like bringing in random stuff from home, like getting the kids to bring in random stuff, like when you're creating something in that lesson, whatever it is. I mean, that's an absolutely dreadful idea. But I've just thought of somebody I worked with, and she was a lawyer. She runs her own law practice, and she decided one of her core values was fun, and like her life and work is full on, like really full on, and she looked at kind of bringing fun into work, and that really kind of shifted things for her, just having that, like, how can I show up and like be fun? Like maybe it's the conversation that I'm having with somebody. Maybe it's like a way of thinking about things, maybe it's just taking time to have like that little bit of connection. So yeah, it's starting with, in the same, like, if you want calm in your life, I mean, a school is possibly one of the most not calm environments. But if that is what you need, then it's sort of having to think about outside the box. So it might be like, right, I need to really prioritize like getting outside for 2 minutes first thing in the morning with a cup of tea to just have a moment, do you know? Or like, I know it's challenging in school, but a 5 minute walk like outside the school gates at lunchtime. I mean, our time is so short. But you're just thinking, even if it needs to be in the toilet, and like you listen to white noise for 2 minutes sitting on the toilet, like it's just starting to be aware of what you need and getting little bits of that in your day to day.
Yeah, these small, tiny actions. And I think that's really gives a good sense of hope for people that they don't necessarily need to chuck everything in the bin and start again and make
No.
some dramatic shift.
Yeah.
Like both of us have
Yeah.
in a way.
And it is like, and it looks like a dramatic shift from the outside. Um, but my transition from being a teacher to what I do now, like it wasn't an overnight thing, it's, and actually maybe it's useful to sort of share that journey, because the the sort of feeling alive for me thing started to kind of open up a curiosity around, like, oh, does that, like, what's making me feel alive? And I remember at the time in school there was an opportunity to do sort of CPD, to do some coaching, and I did that. I think it was only a kind of maybe a couple of sessions about coaching conversations or something, and I just thought like, oh, that's, yeah, that's, I'm interested in that. Like I want to do that. And so I did that, and I really liked that. And I started doing a little bit of that sort of stuff in school. And then my remit at the time was pupil attainment, and part of that was teacher development and staff development. And I just started thinking, gosh, from my experience of being in a classroom, when you're in a great space in your life, like actually managing a classroom and managing children that are struggling in that classroom, you can be like a lot more resilient to it. But if as a teacher you're showing up and you're, and I was there, like you're exhausted and actually you're not really filling up your cup, and you're feeling like that overwhelm, and you feel like you're in that kind of bubble and everything feels really big, and you're not doing anything outside of that. Or you've got, I don't know, you've got an ill parent and the stress of that is really, weighing on you. Whatever it is, I started to think like, gosh, like if we could support teachers like 360 in their lives, like that would, like, could it not have a positive impact on the pupils in their class? If they felt in a good place and felt like they were able to kind of move their lives forward. So that's like, I started to get really interested in that. I did some like workshops around that within the school and within the council, and then I saw an advert for a diploma in transformational coaching, and you could go along to a day to go and find out a bit more about that. And I did that, but I was never thinking, I know what I want to do. I want to open a coaching business. And this, that's not how it worked for me. Like I didn't have this vision and then follow steps to get to that vision,
Mm.
I followed my curiosity, like, what aligns with me feeling alive. And I followed that curiosity and I did that day. And that really like spoke to me. And, and from that point, I started to think, like, actually, like, do you know what? If I could do this diploma, imagine what I could do with an education. And so I did commit to the diploma, and it was a big, like, it was a financial investment. It was a huge time commitment. It was over sort of 9 months. And I think there was 6 weekends, like full on training kind of in Edinburgh, and I had to do, I think, 60 hours, like just practice coaching, and there was loads sort of in it. I was pregnant with my third son at that point. I mean, I didn't see anybody, I don't think, for that like period of about 6 to 9 months because it was so full on. But the irony is that before I did this, I felt like I didn't have any time when I felt stuck. But when I kind of like really like there was that spark in me, that kind of like, where there's a will, there really is a way. And we moved house, we moved out from Edinburgh at that point as well. I mean, I have never been tired, I don't think, in my life. But when you're lit up by something and it's exciting, um, it's amazing what you can do. And I was still doing my like full on job at school, and I still had no intention of running my own business. And it wasn't until probably about the 6 month point, and I actually had a coaching session. And I remember sort of saying, gosh, if I was the sort of person who run my own business, then, I'd love to like work with women who are feeling similar to how I was feeling. And the coach kind of flagged that for me, like, so and why you're not the type of person to run your own business. And I actually left that coaching session kind of going, oh my gosh, I'm going to run my own business. And I went home and told my husband, expecting him to be a bit like, oh my God, well, wait, what, And he was like, I know that if you think you can do it, like you can absolutely do it. Like why not just give it give it a shot? And I did have a maternity leave, so I started my business 2 weeks before my third son was born, and in my mind, I had that year to make it happen, and I went for it. I just was like, this just feels right, and I'm just going to go for it. And it did feel scary, but it also felt scary not to try. But it wasn't that like I've got this perfect vision and now I'm going to work towards it. It was a really kind of organic, like follow my curiosity, if that makes sense.
Yes, I love that phrase, follow your curiosity. It's something I tell my children all the time. Like, they don't need to know what they're going to do with their whole
Yes.
lives. Just keep following what your
Yeah.
curiosity and what makes you
Oh,
happy and lights you
yeah.
up.
Love
Definitely.
that. What a great thing to say to your kids. We're stealing it.
There seems to be two real moments that really clicked. The first one, standing in your kitchen and having that realization that you just wanted to feel alive. And
Yeah.
then the second one in that coaching session when you realized that actually you could be the sort of person that starts your own
Yeah.
coaching business.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about that feeling alive moment. How did that real what did that moment of clarity when you realized that you could actually start your own coaching business? What was that like?
Um, to be totally honest, I was almost like it was almost like shocked. Like, do you know, it sort of felt really obvious. And maybe the shock was that I couldn't believe that I hadn't sort of thought about it before. Um, but there was definitely like, oh my God, now I'm going to have to start my own business. Like there was that sort of knowing that it felt really right, but also that kind of bloody hell, nobody in my family has their own business. Like it was, it felt like big. Um, but yeah, honestly, like, and this isn't, but there is something in that just about the power of like coaching, yes, but just having that space to talk and think about and sort of say your thoughts out loud. It's amazing what we can tell ourselves and how quickly that can flip as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that knowing, did you how did you feel it in your body? Like, how did you know?
So that's such a good question, okay? So I knew because it felt really exciting. Like, my gosh, like imagine that I could, be paid to do this type of work. Like, how amazing like that would be. However, and I think this is really important, like that feeling did not stay. Like I didn't like wake up every morning and just go like, I know this is so right, and like let's take more action. It was absolutely wobbly, and like the self-doubt absolutely came in at times. It's like, ugh. Um, and do you know what I think that really underpinned it all was I knew that that direction really aligned with feeling alive. Like it felt uncomfortable at times, often at the beginning. I mean, God, like I had to so put myself out there. Like, and even now I look back and think, gosh, like I can't believe I did that. But I would honestly like ask myself, like, well, does it make me feel alive? Like it sort of became a joke in our house. Like, yes, it's making me feel alive. Like, oh my God, just post it or just email the person. Um, so yeah, it wasn't a kind of there was a knowing that I really wanted to give this a go, like that was really kind of exciting me. Um, yeah, and a desire to just try it. And it was a sense of there was a sense of like bugger it, like I'm just gonna go for it, and then I'll sort of know I've done it, So that was, I think, useful as well. That kind of like this is something I just need to give a really good shot to, and like let's see where I get to with it. And actually, it was, when I had to make a decision not to go back to teaching after my maternity leave, and my business stuff it took off after about 6 months, and that decision was that was probably the scary point. Like it's not necessarily easy to get back into teaching. I think there's a sort of idea that once you're a teacher you'll always find work, that like it's not the case. It's quite often jobs are just not around. You can't get a job. So to say goodbye to that contract and that security, that felt really terrifying. But then it was also kind of fire underneath me to go for it, And I didn't want to go back. I was loving what I was doing. Not every second of the day, everything comes like I don't think there is any like perfect situation. I will work with women who are at the top of kind of like professional careers, and not always, but sometimes they'll want to leave to something else, like perhaps to work for yourself. Um, and they want that flexibility and things, but I will also work with women who work for themselves and have that flexibility, and the pressure of that can be intense. I have definitely worked with women who have then like actually the dream's been like I want to get back into a career and not be working for myself. I want to be part of a team. I want to have that sort of security, that opportunity for development. Like there isn't, I don't think, the sort of perfect space. It's what suits you in a particular time in your life. Because one thing I've taken from all of this is that I had so much grief when I left teaching. Like I've spoken about this before, but I think I cried more than I have ever cried in my life. Like in that sort of transition from teaching into, I'll probably well up now, into coaching, because I had a vision. Like I thought I knew where I was going with that teaching career, and it's a real privilege to be a teacher. It's something that I'm gonna cry. You're always you're proud to say, like there's a I was always proud to say that I was a teacher, and it felt really difficult saying goodbye to that. And what helped with that is sort of thinking about it, like it is okay. Like I had a brilliant, it was 12 years, I had a brilliant teaching education chapter, and I got so much from that. And actually, I've got so much of that from what I do now as well. But it is okay to have a new chapter. And actually, I want a good few chapters in my life, do you know? And
Mm.
that's exciting. And it's amazing now, actually. I feel that like women that I work with and people that I see, like I'll work with women in their 60s and they're looking at new chapters that, are really exciting, that are full of adventure or writing books or like, do you know, like you get to choose, do you know, like how you want your life to look.
Yeah.
I say that, but I also know that there are like, we also need to keep food on the table and, all of that stuff. And just to kind of talk through that, like a huge part of my transition was that clarity around like my financial situation and our family's financial situation. And, like I would definitely kind of worst case scenarioed, like, what if actually this doesn't work? And, having that clarity is everything. And actually, I think that whatever way that goes, whether it's clarity and thinking like we simply can't afford for me to come out of teaching like at the moment, like the risk is too high. Well, that's a very clear like purpose for me. Like I know why I'm there now. Like, do you know, and it's
Mm.
like, right, um, like how can I make this as good as it can possibly be? And maybe it's for a particular amount of time, and maybe I'm putting money aside to give me the opportunity to look at something different in 3 years' time. Do you know? Like so
Yeah.
much of it's about clarity.
Yeah, having that clarity to choose intentionally, whether
Yes.
it's, yeah, little small things that you can do that day, like just getting outside for 2 minutes or just sitting in the toilet with your headphones in to get a little bit of peace,
Yeah.
something that's going to make you get what you need from that day,
Yeah.
or whether it's moving into something different, a different role, or
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Like a sort of horizontal move, exactly. Like, more
Mm.
aligned with who you are. And just that thing, like getting what you need. One of the surprising things I think for me around values, and I think that they can absolutely change your life, like change how you live. And I think we kind of like owe it to ourselves to know, like, who we are. And also, for kids to see like what that looks like as well. But my feeling alive value, for example, like I know the things that make me feel alive. Like still now, it is like, getting outdoors, it's doing things that scare me. It's like I love a challenge, like whether it's a physical challenge or last year I did a kind of 100 days to up level my life and business challenge. Like I love that. It totally makes me feel alive, but I never want to do it. It's really interesting. Like, I do not wake up in the morning and just think, like, I can't wait, to do things that make me feel alive. Like, I can wait. There's no part of me that wants to go, like, I don't know, and dip in the sea or wants to, like, up level something and, like, post a post on Instagram. Um, it doesn't work like that. Like, it's understanding what you need and setting up kind of systems and taking action on it, and that makes me feel good, and I know the value of that. But it doesn't, once you know your values, you know how you want to feel. Even like creativity is a really good example. I think sometimes like we get this idea that creative people are like, well, they just want to create all the time. And I've worked with a lot of creative people, and I do not think that is the case. I think like often it's absolutely the last thing that they want to do. And it's about like managing your lives to make that as easy as possible. Like, how can I kind of, get started? And for some people, it's like, right, I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes and just go and stand in my studio and or sketch something. Often it's just that getting started bit that's really key. But I think that knowing your core values and choosing to live in a way that aligns with them, like it's hard to do that, but it's also hard to live a life where you are not aligned. And there's a choice in that as well.
Yes, definitely. And the one thing from everything that I know about you and everything that you've said that really comes across is action and how good you are at taking action yourself and inspiring action in others, even if it's tiny little micro actions, just little things that people can do that day. I think there's a lot in that. Can you talk a little bit more about how you do take such action even when you don't feel like it?
I mean, I almost burst out laughing there, Erica, because I feel that I am just the worst procrastinator ever, and actually often like don't take action on things. So that's really funny that that's how you perceived my life. But I think that I have had to, there is a lot of research out there around, you know, habits and around neuroplasticity and around so like it all ties into taking action. But how do I take action when I don't want to is there's a couple of things, okay? So the first thing is that I know like why I am doing it. Does that make sense? So I
Yeah,
know that the thing is like aligned to who I am. And often like the thing is difficult. So take like my 100-day challenge, like to up level my life. So I did that every day and I up leveled my life and my business every day. I put it out there. That felt very vulnerable. And I updated it on Instagram every day. And there was no day I woke up wanting to do that. But I had a vision, I told people about it, so there was the accountability element there. I know that that really works for me. And I made it small as well. So I knew that it could just be something tiny. So it's really like, that is such a big thing for me. And it's literally, I use it every day, constant like times a day. Like I will look at the kitchen when the kids have like run out the door and it'll just be a complete sort of shit show. And I will set a timer for 5 minutes and I'll just be like, right, just blast it for 5 minutes. I mean, my timer on my phone is probably my most used app. I use it to be like, I'll think, right, it's a kind of combination between sort of systems and like and getting started. So in my mind, and I'll put it out there in my coaching groups, I'll be like, right, I'm committed to 2 good quality Instagram posts a week, for example. And I will like have sort of set times in my week where I know that I'm going to work on those. And if it has to shift, it has to shift, but at least I have it in as a starting point.
mm,
And then I'll set a timer. I'll set a timer for 10 minutes. And I know I'm not going to do it in 10 minutes, but my thing is always once I've started, I'm in it and actually I'm probably fine. But I need to get started. And to get started, I need to sort of trick my brain into thinking like, well, I've only got to do this, to go through this pain for 10 minutes. And, then it will be done. So it's something about the sort of the like the sort of structure in place. So like this is just what I do. I'm not having to think about it. Like with
mm.
the gym, I always go to the gym Monday lunchtime now. I'm in an absolute habit of that. And I've just committed to that. Like I said in my coaching group at the start of the year, like for the next 90 days, I am showing up on a Monday at that gym session to lift weights. And like it's like a non-negotiable for me. Like the only time I'm not going there is when I am like not in the country or not in, where we live. Um, if I sort of feel tired or I feel under the weather, unless I'm on my deathbed, I can go and give 20%. Do you know, I don't need to give 100% all of the time. I tell myself that I can go for 10 minutes, and if I'm really not feeling it, I can leave. I've never left a session yet, and I'm like, religiously there. But on a Monday morning, I get up, I put my gym stuff underneath my work clothes. I always deliver a workshop and first thing on a Monday morning. And it's just like I don't even need to think about it. There's no kind of brain drain happening there. I am just like, I know what's happening and I just get it done and I try and make it as small as possible for my mind that it doesn't freak out and tell me it's like completely pointless and is just, I'm gonna, I don't know, it's not worth my time. Any like of that inner critic stuff that can come up that can
Yeah.
stop us doing the thing.
Yeah, I love that. Breaking it down into really small chunks. Yeah, I got actually a visual clock recently so I can Can't see it. It's so
I-
sunny here. But yeah, I just set it and it shows me 5 minutes or whatever ticking down.
yes.
So if I'm really struggling with something, I'll get started on that. But I think there's a real thing around accountability and putting it out there, which is why I think your 100-day up level challenge was so interesting. Can you share some of the things that, first of all, some of the things that you did in it? Because I know we both
Sure.
ended up on the same ceramics class, which was amazing.
You did, yeah.
And what sort of lessons you learned from that?
Yeah. Okay. So some of the things that I did, so the sort of rule that I had, if you like, was basically it had to be something that I would not naturally do anyway. And I think that was really the only rule. Something my future self would thank me for. Okay, so things that I did included, and it was complete range. I mean, some of it was so simple. It was like take my cup of tea outside for 2 minutes, do you know? Like I don't normally do that. So it was like fine, just like that was enough. Things like I completely like decluttered my car. I did a ceramics course. I updated my Instagram bio. I got new like professional like work photos taken. What else did I do? I like decluttered kind of corners of my house, like kind of 10-minute declutters, did some before and afters. I wore clothes and that made me feel like me, like I was more kind of adventurous with that, getting the lippy on. Um, Goodness me, what else did I do? And there was quite a lot of stuff. I did my sort of biggest speaking engagements. That was a big one. Um, I like an up level was like sort of, practicing that talk. Some of my up levels were about my mindset and having to like reframe thoughts. Um, yeah, I mean that's a bit of a taster. There was 100 different up levels, so there was a lot more than that, but that's kind of the stuff that's coming to mind.
Yeah, amazing. And what did you learn about yourself during that
Yeah.
100-day journey?
So what I learned about myself was I did 100 days in a row and that was exhausting, full on. Okay, so that was at the end of it, I was a bit kind of like, oh my gosh, like that was really a lot around Christmas time as well. But a few weeks later, I was just like, wow, what like an amazing experience that was. Like it did move my life and business on undoubtedly. And I think that my big takeaway was that these little kind of deposits of time, like some of them were bigger, but most of them were pretty small. Like there's little deposits of time, like there's that cumulative sort of interest from that. Like
Mhm.
it really did add up to sort of more than the sum of its parts. And I think it's so easy for us to think like, what difference is, I don't know, planting 6 bulbs going to do? Like, what difference is, all of these things, like, what impact's that going to have? And I suppose it's the same with like the gym thing or doing an Instagram post. It's like, what impact is that going to have? Well, the reality is that one thing is not going to have much impact, but that daily like commitment to just those little up levels that you wouldn't normally do, like I was absolutely blown away by like how amazing that is and how life enhancing it is as well. Do you know, like it brought more joy. It absolutely brought more joy because, and I was literally kind of looking around me like, what can I up level today? And actually, one of the things is my lighting in my office. Do you know, and I'm looking around now and I'm like, oh, I love that it's all sorted, do you know? We actually got 2 rescue kittens as well. And we'd been talking about
Wow.
getting cats for ages. And just that up level thing was like, oh my God, I can't think of a better up level. Like, it's time, do you know? Like, and so when they came up, it was just like, oh, yeah, absolutely. But just these little, it was really like, joyful as well and life enhancing, but I never ever wanted to do them. I never wanted to do the up level. I could have given up on day 7, do you know? I think I actually talk about that in one of my kind of up level updates. Is just like not feeling it, want to bin it, but my up level today is just going to be to keep on going. Um, so yeah, it's always interesting to kind of I love a challenge, do you know? Like I think that there's something so valuable. It's why people like run marathons and do these types of things because what an experience to kind of follow through on what you say you're going to do and for it to be really, really bloody hard, but you keep on going, do you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the fact that you'd put it out there and told people you were doing it.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And that's why, like spaces where you can do that can be so useful, whether it's like, an Instagram account or like a coaching group or a friend. Well, friend groups, sometimes we're too nice to each other in friend groups. Sometimes, you sometimes need somebody like, a kind of, if you're running your own business, somebody else who's running their own business who, opinion you respect. You would want to show them that you had followed through. Do you know, like that's
Yeah,
the sort of
yeah.
sweet spot.
Have you ever thought about doing a group up level so everyone could do it together? That would be
So we are
amazing.
all up leveling currently in my coaching group. So I run three kind of year-long coaching groups, and we have up leveled for the whole month of March. So every day, everybody's been in leveling, blah, up leveling, and we're actually going to do it for the next sort of got a 90-day challenge now. So we're doing it for that period as well. So it's amazing to see like the impact of that and where people kind of get to with that.
Fantastic. Oh, that's amazing. I'll need to
Yeah,
look into that definitely.
it's really fun. Yeah.
And you've talked a lot about values throughout this. Can you maybe share a little bit more about that and maybe some tips for people listening that maybe aren't clear on their values? What can they do
Yeah,
to
yeah, of
get
course.
clear?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so a really easy starting point would simply be to you can always you'll find values exercises and things online. I always meant to do one, haven't created that yet, but you can absolutely do that. But it can get a little bit confusing and you can overthink it a bit and so actually I think sometimes it's just more useful to think about like how do I want to feel, so maybe it's how do I want to feel this week, and just think about that. How do I want to feel this week? Like, do I just want to feel calm? Do I just want to feel fun? Like, how do I want to feel? And I mean, honestly, just like write that word I can't even spell, I can't even write fun properly. Write that word in the middle of a bit of paper and then like populate that. Like, okay, so what could fun look like this week? So maybe it's like a kitchen disco. Maybe it is like watching something like that amuses you that you find funny. Maybe it is mixing it up, do you know? Maybe it's going like taking the family out for a walk after dinner. Maybe it is, oh my God, just, absolutely anything. Like speaking to a friend. What else would I find fun? I mean, I'd find, what else could it be? Maybe it's like the clothes that you wear, do you know? Like it's just it's just like finding the fun. Just yeah, find the fun in whatever way. Like yes, it can be games, but it can also be like a sort of, a quick thumb war with your kids. Like it could be wearing like a silly hat, anything that's kind of aligns with fun. And if you're not sure what fun kind of looks like to you, then give yourself a blank piece of paper and just allow the thoughts to come. Do you know? When's the last time that you thought, oh, this is brilliant fun? Do you know? Like, I mean, I love like kind of windows down, music on. Do you know? Like, when was the last time that you thought like this was fun? Maybe it was trying to do a headstand. Maybe it was like cooking or getting a veg box delivered and having to think like really creatively about how to use it. When did you last feel like fun? If you're struggling there, go back to when you were a child. What did you find fun as a child? Maybe you loved making cards. Like, could you make like silly little cards to people? Do you know? It's, you're really wanting to kind of mine your life and experience for times when you felt that way and then start to kind of like capture all of that. And then the next step is like, okay, so if that's all the stuff that I find fun, how can I start to kind of like get a little bit of that in this week? And we want to get it as tiny as possible. So fun for me, not so much at the moment actually, but like first when I first started looking at feeling alive, one of the things was absolutely getting the sea. And but that was more difficult to do, do you know, like young family, like logistically, that's a bit tricky. So I
Mm.
remember for quite a long time, I would do like sort of 30 seconds cold shower at the end of my normal shower, and it was just like a tiny hit of that thing, and it made me feel alive, do you know? So it's thinking about like if some of the things you're looking at and thinking, well, do you know, I can't fit that into my week. Do you know, I can't fit going on like a weekend away into my week. No, you can't. But if you're going away because you like to mix things up, how could you mix things up? Like, could you go a different route to work? Could you go and work in a different space? Could you go to a cafe you've never been to before? So it's like trying to get like tiny ways to get that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot in that as well, and it's you're so sort of inspiring and engaging, I think, which is why you are just the perfect person to help so many people that are maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit stuck, and just bringing it back and starting small. And I'm curious how you would encourage people to find that space in their busy days. Obviously, coaching would be an ideal space, but if that's not viable at the moment, how could people find that space, that moment to pause?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we could do your lovely cup of tea and have a pour with vinegar.
Yeah, I was not leading
I
you into that, but
Yeah. I am a massive fan of a piece of paper and a pen. You know, it can be a scrap of paper. I did a podcast, my podcast, A Live More Experiment, with Dr. Kate Eller, and she was a surgeon and she's had a huge career shift and is now a personal trainer and coach, and she's also kind of massively grown her Instagram to from 200 to over 100,000 followers, and you know, all in a really short space of time. And she said that one of the best bits of advice that she was given when she just felt so kind of stuck in her career as a surgeon and just really lost in it. And a friend said to her, take a notebook and go and sit in a cafe for an hour and just write down, you know, whatever you need to kind of write down. And I just thought, I think that's just like the best advice
yeah,
ever. Like, you know, we can all find a little window of time to sit down with a pen and paper, even if it's just for 2 minutes, to just write down everything that's on our minds. I think that can be a really useful place to start and a useful exercise. And you
yeah,
know, like and something to come back to as well, like a one-off session of that, you know, great. But yeah, like that is a tool that you can come to every day or, you know, once a week or but it does can give you that space when life feels incredibly full on and busy. You will find, you know, take 5 minutes of doom scrolling and grab a pen and write some stuff down.
yeah. I listened to that episode and it was, yeah, incredible. And I love just sitting with a cup of tea and a blank sheet of paper and just mind map whatever's going on. And it does give me that space. It's actual physical space to start with, and then helps you jot down whatever's in your mind, and you can then actually see where things connect and where there's gaps and things, and maybe you doodle. Maybe everyone's different, so whatever sort of works
Absolutely.
for you.
And you know, sometimes people do ask me, like, yeah, but what do you actually write? And I get that because it's almost like a mystery. You know, people talk about kind of journaling and all, but I mean, there's lots of different ways to journal, but the sort of like basic, I think, most useful way is you literally just write what's on your mind. So sometimes I will set a timer and I will honestly write, like, oh my God, I don't even know what's going on in my mind. I just feel like completely overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I feel really worried about this. And, you know, one of the boys is really struggling with that and I don't know what to do about it. And this client said that and I'm worried about it. Do you know, like, and it's just like blah. And it's that sort of what's that called? You know, the spool of
A
consciousness,
brain
like
dump sort of thing.
it's
Yeah,
absolutely a brain dump.
yeah,
And just, you know, you're not writing for anybody to see it. You don't need to be a writer at all. It's probably going to be illegible to anybody else, it is space for you, just like let it all come out.
Yeah. Actually, a really good exercise, which could take quite a long time, is just to write down absolutely everything that's in your mind and
Absolutely.
every task that you've been holding, everything that
Yeah.
someone's ever said to you that's still in
Oh,
the back of your mind, just
yeah.
getting it all down on paper. And
Yeah.
then things that have to be actions, you can put, like, schedule them to be actioned.
Absolutely.
Everything else, if it's not serving you, burn it or
Yeah.
get rid of it in a safe way.
Yeah.
But whatever works for you. Just because we sit with all these things that are might have happened like 20, 30 years ago, and we're still like coming up with things people have said or things that happened or things you wish you'd done, or which, yeah, we've not got space for that. We want to have create more space for other more useful thoughts to come in.
Exactly. Yeah. So let it all out.
Let it
And
all
it's amazing.
out.
I think it can also feel so much when it's up here, but actually just that process of putting it down can make it feel so much more like manageable as well.
Yes. I just want to bring it back to that feeling of aliveness
Yeah.
and how you had that moment of clarity, and then you've taken these small steps that have led to this change. I
Mhm.
wonder if that feeling of aliveness, is that something that you have returned to? Is it something you had sort of growing up, or is it a newer sort of experience?
It's such a good question. Not something I've ever thought about before. But yeah, I think it was probably yeah, I think a return to. I grew up in the country, and we had a great childhood out exploring. And I think that probably I just naturally kind of felt alive in that, and that had sort of got lost a bit in my kind of like probably the later 20s actually, when life started to feel like a bit more serious,
Mm.
and that kind of like work hard kind of thing came in. Not that, it's not about not working hard, but that was not serving me, that, just do more and do more. Um, so yeah, I think that it was kind of a coming back to, although, quite often people will talk about like, I want to get back to that person that I was, and that doesn't really resonate with me. What I love, there's a kind of idea, and I can't remember whose idea it is, but iPhones, like you'll have like a iPhone 16, and that iPhone is like an edition that is better than the one that's come before, but it's also built on everything that has come before.
Mm.
And I'm 45 at the moment, and sort of if I'm kind of Hannah 4.5 this year, like that is, that's the kind of edition that I'm on. Is that what I mean? Edition? Yeah, it's my current kind of edition, if you like. And it's okay that it's a bit different to the last edition, and there's some improvements made and some changes made and some things have been let go of.
Mm.
And like all of the stuff that's come before is part of that. But yeah, but we're allowed to, iterate and evolve.
Definitely. Oh, I think that's a lovely and hopeful way of looking at things as well. And hopefully, this conversation today will have given people a lot of hope and inspiration, no matter where they are, that they can take small steps or whatever they need just to make their days a little bit more, to make themselves feel a little bit alive and their days a little bit more intentional. And I wonder if you could perhaps leave our listeners with a little small exercise that they could do while they're maybe pausing for tea today and this week that can help them feel more alive today.
Okay, so a tiny exercise would, maybe we've talked about the kind of how we feel exercise, but a little additional one might just be like, how can I up level my life today? One little tiny action.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's just about just looking around and just one little thing that your future self is going to thank you for. And it only needs to take, 90 seconds.
brilliant. I love that. You shared so much value in this conversation. Is there anything that we've not covered that you'd like to share, or anything that's coming up for you in business over the next while?
I think it's always more that can be shared, isn't there? come and listen to my podcast or follow me on Instagram and you'll get lots more and business stuff. I'm hoping to do another like lot of episodes for my podcast before the summer. So that's maybe a kind of what's next thing for me.
Definitely. Well, I will be tuning in because I love the episodes that you've shared so far. And yeah, I'm really inspired. Every time I meet you, I'm blown away by your enthusiasm and positivity and the way that you just light up a room and share that with other people. So it's really, really inspiring. And I know you used to do that for children, and there's so much value in that. And teachers are just incredible. But I think to build on this and what you're doing now and sharing it with so many women to help them feel more alive in their day-to-day life is just incredible. And yeah, I've learned so much in this conversation, from whether it's just following your curiosity and really sort of leaning into how you want to feel and taking tiny actions. It doesn't need to be a whole major life shift. It can just be a small up level to build more fun into our days. So yeah, I am going to make a cup of tea, get a blank sheet of paper, and yeah, work out what I can do to up level my day to day, and then my life maybe. And maybe I need a challenge. So yeah, hopefully other people have got as much inspiration from our conversation as I have. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And yeah, maybe we can share our ceramic creations at some point, because I'm sure yours is so
Not
much
sure the world's
better.
ready for that. Thank you so much, Erica. What an absolute pleasure, and always gorgeous to speak with you.
Lovely, thank you. If something in this episode stayed with you, don't try to change everything all at once. Just start with a moment. Make some tea, let it steep, take a breath, and notice what's actually there. And from there, choose whatever matters next for you. This is the Tea Mind. From presence to clarity, so you can live with intention.